I was 3 sips into a Mai Tai that cost more than my first week's rent when the notification hit. It wasn't a polite chime, it was that frantic, grinding vibration against the marble tabletop that usually meant a server farm in Virginia had just caught fire, or a junior developer had deleted the production database. My stomach clenched on instinct, a trauma response trained over 2 decades in tech. The sun was setting over Maui, painting the sky in aggressive shades of bruised purple and arrogant gold, the kind of sunset people put on postcards to prove they were happy. I wasn't happy. I was exhausted. My bones felt like they were filled with wet cement. This was my first vacation in 3 years. 3 years of 80-hour weeks. 3 years of eating vending machine crackers for dinner. 3 years of keeping a $200 million company afloat with duct tape and caffeine. I stared at the screen, letting the fear dissipate into a cold, hard curiosity. The email was from Gordon, our CEO, a man whose understanding of cloud infrastructure was limited to knowing that it sounded expensive and lived in the sky. The subject line was blank. That's the corporate equivalent of silence in a dark alley. I unlocked the phone. The glare of the screen fought the Hawaiian sunset. The body of the email was 2 sentences. Effective immediately, your services are no longer required. Don't bother coming back. I read it once. I wiped the condensation from my glass off my thumb and read it again. Then, I read it a third time, whispering it out loud to a seagull that was eyeing my garnish. The text in my head formed the perfect summary. He fired me by email on my first vacation in 3 years. Don't bother coming back, he wrote. He forgot our entire $200 million cloud system ran under my private license. I revoked it. The next morning, the CTO screamed, "Why is the cloud inaccessible?" I texted back, "Because you fired this guy." That was the truth, but in the moment, I felt a numbness spread from my chest to my fingertips. It wasn't sadness. Sadness is what you feel when your dog dies. This was a cold, metallic void. It was the feeling of a circuit breaker tripping in a silent house. I thought about the last 3 years. I thought about the night my dad died. I was in the hospital waiting room, laptop open on my knees, migrating our SQL database because Gordon insisted we couldn't afford downtime during business hours. I missed the moment my dad took his last breath because I was troubleshooting a latency issue on the payment gateway. That was the core of my internal conflict, sacrificing my personal life and grief for a job that just called me disposable. I was Parker. They called me the uptime queen. When the internet broke, Parker fixed it. When the load balancers choked on Black Friday traffic, I rerouted the packets. I was the invisible structural integrity of the entire company, and they had just fired me via email while I was wearing a swimsuit. My first instinct was to call HR, but I remembered HR was a department designed to protect the company from lawsuits, not to protect employees from sociopaths. My second instinct was to throw the phone into the Pacific Ocean. But my third instinct was the one that made me good at my job. It was the instinct that analyzed systems, identified vulnerabilities, and executed commands. I took another sip of the Mai Tai. The rum burned pleasantly on its way down. Gordon thought he was cutting dead weight. He thought I was just an expensive legacy employee who didn't fit the new vision. What he didn't know, what nobody in that suit seemed to remember, was the architecture of the beast they were riding. They thought the cloud was this magical, nebulous thing that just worked. They didn't realize it was a machine built by human hands, my hands. And more importantly, they didn't realize whose name was on the lease. I set the phone down on the little plastic table. The condensation made a perfect ring. Interesting, I whispered. I opened my laptop. The hotel Wi-Fi was garbage, barely enough to stream a movie, but plenty for what I needed to do. I navigated to the login page for our cloud provider. I typed in my credentials, my fingers moving on muscle memory. Access granted. The dashboard loaded. Green lights everywhere. 99.999% uptime. It was a beautiful thing. I checked the billing tab. My eyes narrowed. There it was. My personal credit card, my personal email address, my private commercial license. Years ago in the startup days, Gordon had told me, "Just put it on your card, Parker. We need to move fast and break things." So, I did. I moved fast. I didn't break things. I built them. Because I was the one who set it up. Because I was the one who maintained it. And because legal was too busy huffing their own hot air to audit the vendor contracts properly, the entire infrastructure of a $200 million company was technically, legally, and physically mine. They hadn't just fired an employee. They had evicted the landlord. I closed the laptop. The sun was gone now. The ocean was black and restless. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to finish my drink and then I was going to wait. Because you don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. You let them pull the pin. You just make sure you're holding the spoon. Gordon wanted me gone. Fine. But he was about to learn a very expensive lesson about gravity. When you cut the strings, the puppet doesn't just stop dancing. It collapses. I signaled the waiter. "Another one," he asked, looking at my empty glass. "Make it a double," I said. "I'm celebrating." "Oh." "What's the occasion?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that just realized the cage door was unlocked. "I just got fired," I said, "and I think I just became the most powerful woman in the tech industry." The waiter looked confused, but he nodded and walked away. He didn't understand. Nobody did. Not yet. But by tomorrow morning, everyone would know. The silence was coming. It was going to be deafening. The quiet determination of the night before held firm, but as I sat on my balcony overlooking the shifting shades of the black ocean, the cold analysis of the situation demanded I review the recent past. I needed to understand exactly why Gordon had pulled the pin, ensuring I aimed my retaliation correctly. The answer, inevitably, was Austin Vance. He had arrived 2 weeks ago like a bad smell masked by expensive cologne. Our new chief operating officer, brought in to streamline operations and optimize synergy. Corporate speak for firing the people who do the work and hiring his fraternity brothers. Austin was in his early 30s, looked 24, and had teeth so unnaturally white they looked radioactive. He wore those quilted Patagonia vests that screamed, "I work in venture capital, but I've never actually built anything in my life." My personal conflict with him wasn't just professional, it was existential. Austin represented the arrogance of unearned power, the kind of person who could casually dismantle the architecture I had poured my grief and sleepless nights into, simply because I was an expensive number on a spreadsheet. Every time he spoke, the exhaustion I felt from the past 3 years seemed to double. Our first meeting had been in the glass, walled conference room we called the Fishbowl. Gordon had introduced him as a visionary. I introduced myself as the person who makes sure the visionary's email actually sends, I said, keeping my voice level, but with enough dryness to warrant a fire extinguisher. Austin looked at me like I was a smudge on his Gucci loafers. I was wearing my standard uniform: black hoodie, jeans, no makeup, hair in a bun held together by a pencil and sheer willpower. I didn't look like a culture fit. I looked like competence. Cloud infrastructure lead. That sounds heavy, Austin said, testing my name Parker like it was a cheap wine. We really need all that internal overhead. I have some buddies over at Stratosphere Solutions who could probably manage our stack for half the cost. I felt a vein in my forehead throb. Stratosphere Solutions is a glorified reseller, Austin. We handle 4 terabytes of throughput per second. Your buddies would melt their servers in 10 minutes. He laughed. A hollow, dry sound. Proprietary usually just means outdated, Parker. We need to be agile. We need to be serverless. We need AI-driven scalability. He was throwing words at me that he'd read in a Forbes article. Utterly ignorant of their meaning, he just knew they sounded expensive and important. We are serverless where it counts, I countered, managing to keep my voice steady, professional, and our scalability is automated based on real-time load metrics. I wrote the scripts myself. Right, he said, waving a hand dismissively. Scripts. That feels very 2015. We need a holistic platform approach. I stopped listening. I knew the type. He was a demolition man disguised as an architect. He didn't want to understand the system. He wanted to pee on it to mark his territory. This was not about optimization, it was about conquest. And in his eyes, I was an obstacle to be removed. Over the next week, I saw him lurking. He wasn't doing work. He was snooping. I remember catching him staring at one of my monitoring dashboards. A beautiful, sprawling map of our network nodes, pulsating with live traffic data. It looks complicated, he murmured, not looking at me. It is, I replied. It's the nervous system of the company. Nervous systems can be transplanted, he muttered. I should have known then. I should have seen the knife coming, but I was too busy keeping the lights on. I was too busy handling the migration of our archival data to cold storage so we could save the company, his company, another $10,000 a month. I later found out through the grapevine that Austin had ordered a full audit of IT spend the day he started. But he didn't ask for the technical documentation. He asked for the billing contacts. He asked for the org charts. He was looking for fat to trim, and as the highest paid engineer, I was the marbled steak. He convinced Gordon I was a bottleneck, resistant to change. He probably told them he could replace me with a sleek, outsourced team. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. He was right about one thing. I was a bottleneck, but not in the way he thought. I wasn't clogging the pipe. I was the pipe. I was the dam holding back a chaotic flood of data. And he had just convinced the village idiot, Gordon, to blow up the dam while I was thousands of miles away. Sitting in Maui, I replayed that last conversation with him. You really think you're replaceable, don't you, Parker? He had sneered. Nobody is irreplaceable. Austin, I had said. But some things are load-bearing. You pull them out, the roof comes down. We'll see, he had said. I opened my laptop again, navigating to the audit logs. There it was, user Austin, COO accessing the billing summary. User Gordon, CEO approving a request titled IT restructuring plan. They had planned this while I was booking my flight. They waited until I was over the Pacific Ocean to pull the trigger, thinking I'd be too distracted by the aloha spirit to fight back. They thought I'd just fade away, embarrassed and defeated. They clearly didn't know that I run on spite and a need for accountability. Austin wanted to cut costs. He wanted to eliminate the legacy overhead. Congratulations. He just saved the company my salary. But he forgot to ask who owned the building before he evicted the tenant. The morning after the firing, I woke up with a deep, persistent ache, but not a hangover. It was the ache of a system under stress. For a split second, the muscle memory of panic kicked in. I needed to check the logs. Did the nightly backup run? Then reality slammed into me. I didn't have to check the logs. Not my circus, not my monkeys. That thought brought a wave of relief so intense it was almost dizzying. It was the first moment in years I hadn't carried the burden of the company's stability. But curiosity is a disease, and I was terminal. I sat up in the hotel bed and reached for my laptop. I tried logging into my corporate email first, just to see. Account disabled. Contact administrator. I tried Slack. You have been signed out of this workspace. I tried the virtual private network. Authentication failed. Austin had been thorough, efficient. He had clearly given the order to the sysadmin team. My team, the kids I had hired and trained to scrub me from existence the moment the email was sent. It stung, I won't lie. It felt like walking into your own house and finding the locks changed and your family staring at you through the window like they'd never seen you before. A decade of work, late nights, and saved disasters, and I was being treated like a security threat. But then the cold logic returned. The very logic they counted on me abandoning in favor of emotional pleading. They had locked the front door. They had boarded up the windows. They forgot that the ground the house stood on belonged to me. I opened a private browser window. I typed in the address for the Amazon Web Services Management Console. I didn't go to the corporate single sign-on page. That was certainly dead. I went to the root login, the master key. Username Parker Cloud Architect at gmail.com. Password redacted. Multi-factor authentication code entered from my personal phone. I held my breath. If they were even 10% as competent as Austin's LinkedIn profile claimed, they would have seized this account first. They would have legally forced a transfer, threatened me with a lawsuit to get the keys before firing me. Welcome to AWS Console. The dashboard loaded. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half bark. They hadn't touched it. They hadn't even looked at it. To Austin, the cloud was just a utility bill. He didn't understand that accounts are tied to legal entities. Years ago, when the company credit card was maxed out buying Herman Miller chairs for the founders, I had used my personal American Express Platinum to spin up the initial clusters. I had registered the domain names. I had set up the root credentials. Legal's response to my transfer requests was always the same. We're currently reviewing the liability implications. Let's circle back in Q3. Finance's response. The corporate card has a spending limit that triggers a fraud alert. Just keep expensing it, Parker. It's easier. Laziness, incompetence, bureaucracy. They had woven a rope of red tape, and now they had hanged themselves with it. I looked at the screen. The entire digital footprint of the company was right there. Production databases, client portals, source code repositories. I saw the real-time metrics. CPU usage was spiking, probably the morning login rush. The auto-scaling groups were spinning up new instances. The system was breathing, and I was holding the oxygen tube. I clicked on the billing tab. Current month, to date balance $42,381.12. Payment method Parker's personal Amex. They fired me. but they were still charging lunch to my credit card. The audacity was almost impressive. I opened a terminal window on my laptop. I still had my SAH keys. They were hard-coded into the Bastion hosts because, again, I was the one who set up the security groups. I was in. I was inside the network. I was a ghost in the machine. I saw active sessions. Kevin, my senior developer, logged into a database replica. Sarah, the security analyst, running a vulnerability scan. They were working, oblivious to the fact that their former boss was hovering above them like a vengeful god. I typed a simple command. Who am I? Root. The words stared back at me. Root, the base, the source. Absolute power. I wasn't an employee anymore. I was a hostile external entity with administrative privileges. I could burn it all down right now. That was too crude. That was criminal. I didn't want to be a criminal. I wanted to be a lesson. I wanted them to feel the silence. I didn't want to break the window. I wanted to turn off the air. I navigated to the Identity and Access Management dashboard. This is where permissions are controlled. I saw the role Austin COO audit. I smirked. I opened a new text file. Step 1, revoke the license. Step 2, silence the alarms. Step 3, the blackout. I wasn't going to hack them. I was going to retrieve my property. I picked up my phone and called American Express. Hi, I said to the automated voice. I need to report a lost card. Please cancel my current number immediately and issue a new one. Certainly, the robot said. Your current card has been deactivated. Step 1 complete. The next time AWS tried to charge my card, tomorrow, the payment would fail. But AWS gives a grace period. I didn't want a grace period. I wanted immediate results. I checked the company calendar. Still synced to my phone. Town Hall meeting, the future of Cloud Corp. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Perfect. I closed the laptop. The calm had returned, not as exhaustion, but as a cold, hard focus. I was going to enjoy my day at the beach. I was going to snorkel with turtles. And tomorrow at 10:01 a.m. I was going to turn off the sun. The next morning, Maui was disgustingly beautiful. The ocean was a sheet of turquoise glass. The air smelled of plumeria and expensive sunscreen. I sat on my balcony wearing a bathrobe and sunglasses, looking like a retired villain from a Bond movie. My laptop was open on the patio table next to a pot of Kona coffee. It was 9:55 a.m. in Oregon. The town hall was about to start. I didn't have access to the Zoom link anymore, obviously. But I didn't need it. I had something better. I had the internal chat logs of the DevOps team, which I was currently tailing via a backdoor shell I'd left open on a forgotten staging server. I could see the chatter scrolling by in green text on a black background. Kevin Dev. You guys seeing this lag on the OS server? Sarah Sec. Yeah. Latency is creeping up. Is Parker around? Kevin Dev. Dude, didn't you hear? She's gone. Austin fired her yesterday via email. Sarah Sec. What? When? Jesus, who's running the migration? Kevin Dev. We are. It's chaos. I took a slow sip of coffee. Poor kids. They were about to learn trial by fire. My plan was simply demonstrate the vital role I played, not to hurt them, but to hold the executives accountable. They were innocent bystanders caught in the executive fallout. 10 a.m. The town hall was starting. Austin would be on stage now, flashing those radioactive veneers, talking about lean operations and trimming the fat. He was probably making a joke about how easy it is to manage the cloud in 2025. It's all automated, he would say. It runs itself. I minimized the chat and brought up the AWS console. I navigated to CloudWatch, the monitoring service. This is the dashboard that tells engineers if the system is healthy. It's the eyes of the ship. I selected the main dashboard group. Action delete. Are you sure? I clicked yes. Instantly in the DevOps chat, panic flared. Kevin Dev, guys, my dashboard just went blank. Sarah Sec, mine too. Resource not found. New guy Steve. Is the internet down? Kevin Dev, no, Slack is working. The monitors are gone. The widgets are just deleting themselves. I smiled. Step 1: blind the enemy. They couldn't see the traffic spikes. They couldn't see the error rates. They were flying a 747 in a thunderstorm, and I just covered the windshield with duct tape. My emotional state was one of pure, cold focus, detached from any sense of personal malice, yet satisfying in its surgical precision. Now for the engines. I navigated to the API gateway. This is the front door for all mobile apps and web clients. Every time a customer tries to log in, check their balance, or upload a file, it goes through here. I selected the production stage. I looked at the throttling settings. Currently set to 10,000 requests per second. I changed it to 0. Update configuration. The loading spinner spun for 3 seconds, then success. I switched back to the chat logs. It took exactly 12 seconds for the system to react. Support bot alert. Ticket volume spiking. 50 new tickets in 10 seconds. Kevin Dev. I'm getting 3 errors on the login page. Sarah Sec. The app is dead. I can't log in. New guy Steve. What do we do? Who knows how to revert the API config? Kevin Dev. That was Parker's domain. I don't even have write access to that gateway. Chaos. Pure, unadulterated entropy. I opened Twitter. I searched for Cloud Corp. Angry user 123. Ez Cloud Corp down. App keeps crashing. TechCruncher. Reports surfacing of major outage at Cloud Corp. Timing coincides with rumored executive shakeup. I checked the time. 10:15 a.m. Austin was probably just getting to the part of his speech about unmatched reliability. Suddenly, my personal cell phone buzzed. It wasn't a notification. It was a call. I looked at the ID Gordon. I let it ring. It stopped. Then it rang again immediately. I let it ring. Then a text came through. Gordon Parker, are you seeing this? System is down. Need you to hop on a call ASAP. He thinks I work for him? I told the seagull, who had returned, watching me with predatory interest. I didn't reply. I just watched the chat logs accelerate. Kevin Dev. Austin just ran out of the conference room. He looks like he's going to puke. Sarah Sec. The CTO is screaming at me asking why the rollback isn't working. Kevin Dev. Tell him we don't have permissions! The rollback script runs on the Jenkins server, and the Jenkins server can't talk to the repo because the keys are dead. They were figuring it out. Slowly, they were realizing that the fat they trimmed was actually the muscle, the bone, and the brain. I decided to turn the screw one more time. I went to the RDS database console. I didn't delete the data. I'm not a monster. But I did modify the security group, the virtual firewall. I removed the rule that allowed the web servers to talk to the database. The application wasn't just down now. It was lobotomized. Another text from Gordon. Gordon, Parker, pick up. This is an emergency. We will pay your consulting rate. I took a slow sip of coffee. Consulting rate? Oh, Gordon, we are way past consulting rates. We are in the realm of... You insulted my ancestors. Rates. I watched the stock ticker for Cloud Corp. Though a private company, the investors watched the uptime like hawks. Austin's little audit had just cost them more in 20 minutes than my salary for the next 10 years. I leaned back. I had fired the first shot. The blindness, the silence, the panic. But I wasn't done. I had to make sure they understood why this was happening. I had to make sure they knew this wasn't a glitch. This was an eviction. While the digital world burned down around them, I ordered breakfast. Avocado toast with poached eggs, because I could afford it, and because the methodical act of slicing an avocado was a nice contrast to the chaos I had just unleashed. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I needed the silence to speak for me, but I also needed to establish the new terms. I couldn't simply rely on the outage. I needed the legal shield I had painstakingly constructed over the years. You're probably wondering, isn't this illegal? Isn't this extortion? Let me clarify something for the armchair lawyers. If I had hacked into their system, yes, I'd be going to federal prison. But I didn't hack their system. I simply stopped letting them borrow mine. The legacy trap is a common phenomenon in tech startups that grow too fast, driven by executives like Gordon who prize cheapness above all else. In the beginning, you put servers on your credit card and register domains under your personal GoDaddy account because the corporate card is maxed out. I set up a shell company for tax reasons. Parker Smith Consulting LLC. 3 years ago, I sent a memo titled Critical Infrastructure Asset Transfer, urging them to transfer the entire AWS organization to Cloud Corp. Incorporated. I remember the meeting. Gordon looked at the transfer fees, which amounted to about $15,000 in administrative overhead. $15,000? He had scoffed. Just leave it, Parker. We have an implied license. We'll fix it when we IPO. Brad, the general counsel told me, as long as we pay the bill, it's fine. Don't be a bureaucrat, Parker. So, I became the bank. Every month, AWS charged my Amex $40,000 plus. I submitted an expense report. Cloud Corp reimbursed me. Technically, I was a reseller. I was a service provider. And my client, Cloud Corp, just fired me without cause and without a contract termination clause. When I turned off the sky, I wasn't sabotaging their company. I was terminating service for a non-paying customer who had been abusive to the vendor. I pulled up the folder on my phone named CIA Cover Your Ass. It contained every email, every Slack message, every signed document where they acknowledged that I owned the account. I had just forwarded that evidence, along with the 2-sentence firing email, to Gordon Austin and the entire board of directors. My phone rang. This time it wasn't Gordon. It was Brad, the general counsel. I answered. Parker. His voice was tight, high-pitched. He sounded like he was being strangled by his own tie. Hey, Brad, I said calmly, cutting into my poached egg yolk. How's the golf swing? Parker, turn it back on now, he hissed. We can discuss a severance package, but you cannot hold the company hostage. This is a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Actually, Brad, it's not, I said, letting the professional logic override any twinge of guilt. I'm the account holder. My name is on the invoice. My social security number is attached to the tax ID. You guys fired me, which means you terminated the implied contract between Cloud Corp and Parker Smith Consulting. I'm just mitigating my damages. I can't afford a $40,000 bill next month if I'm unemployed. We will sue you into the ground, he yelled, the sound crackling through the phone line. You can try, I said, taking a bite of avocado toast. But discovery will be fun. I have the email from 2020, one where you specifically declined the asset transfer to save money. I have the email from yesterday where Gordon fired me with zero notice. And right now, I have the root credentials. If you sue me, I might just decide that my company needs to pivot and delete the data to make room for new projects. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Brad knew I had them. He knew that even if they won a lawsuit in 2 years, the company would be dead in 2 days without the data. What do you want? Brad asked. The fight was leaving him, replaced by genuine desperation. I don't want to talk to you, Brad, and I don't want to talk to Gordon, I said, keeping my demands focused and clean. I want to talk to the board. The board is in an emergency meeting, he said. Good. Tell them to check their email. And tell Austin. I paused, letting the silence hang. Tell Austin that legacy debt collects interest. I hung up. It had been 45 minutes since the outage began. The losses were probably hitting the $1 million mark. I felt a twinge of guilt about the customers, the innocent businesses relying on our platform. But then I remembered the way Austin looked at me when he said, "Do we really need all that overhead?" Yes, Austin, you do. And right now, the overhead is standing over your grave. I had fired the first shot. The numbness was completely gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't a game anymore. This was a negotiation, and I held the only currency that mattered. By 11 a.m., the situation had shifted from a technical difficulty to an existential threat. My phone was vibrating so constantly, it was sliding across the table on its own. Calls from Gordon, calls from Brad, calls from numbers I didn't recognize, probably board members. I ignored them all, letting the fear steep for maximum effect. Then a text came in from Marcus Thorne. Marcus was the chief technology officer. He was a decent guy, actually. A bit spineless. The kind of leader who let Austin steamroll him because he avoided conflict, but he respected the tech. He had been at a conference in London, which is why he hadn't been part of the ambush yesterday. He must have just landed and turned his phone onto the apocalypse. Marcus texted, "Parker, I just landed. The dashboard is red. Everyone is screaming. Kevin says he can't access the route. What is going on?" I felt a pang of sympathy. Marcus didn't deserve this, but he was complicit by negligence. He had let the fox into the hen house. Marcus pleaded, "Please. Gordon says you went rogue. He says you hacked us. I told him that's impossible. You're the most ethical engineer we have. Talk to me." I stared at the screen. Ethical. That was the trap. They relied on my ethics to cover for their greed. They assumed I would never let the system fail because I loved it too much. They weaponized my professionalism against me, and I was done playing the martyr. I typed a reply. I replied, "I didn't hack anything, Marcus. I just took my keys back." Marcus texted, "Keys? What keys?" I replied, "The AWS root keys. The ones registered to my personal email. The ones I asked you to transfer 3 years ago." 3 bubbles appeared. He was typing, then stopped, then typing again. Marcus texted, "Oh my God, you own the infra." I replied, "Bingo. Marcus, Parker. Gordon is an idiot. Austin is a fraud. I know that. But we have clients. We have hospitals using our data archives. You have to turn it back on. Hospitals." That was a low blow. We just handled their cold storage backups. Nobody was dying, but Marcus knew how to hit my conscience. I replied, "I can't, Marcus. I'm not an employee. I have no authorization to operate Cloud Corp systems. That would be a liability." "Marcus, stop it. This isn't a joke. Why is the cloud inaccessible?" I typed the line I had been holding in my chest for 24 hours. I replied, "Because you fired the sky." I hit send, watching the read receipt appear instantly. 10 seconds later, Marcus called. I answered this time. "Parker, He breathed. He sounded like he was running through an airport. I'm firing Austin right now. I'm calling the board. I'm telling them everything. Just please give us the keys. It's not that simple, Marcus, I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the adrenaline coursing through me. I don't trust you anymore. You let a guy in a fleece vest dismantle my team. You let him fire me while I was on vacation. The trust is gone. The contract is void. What do you want? He begged. Name your price. Double salary. Equity. We can override Gordon. The board is terrified. I don't want a job, I said. I want a buyout. I own the infrastructure. If you want it back, you have to buy it from me. Parker Smith Consulting LLC is open to acquisition offers, but the price just went up. How much? $5 million? I said. Cash, plus full vesting of my original stock options that you guys tried to cancel. $5 million. That's extortion! No, Marcus. Extortion is threatening to release your browser history. This is business. You want to buy a fully operational, enterprise-grade cloud architecture with 99.99% uptime history. That's the market rate. Actually, it's a discount. Building it from scratch would cost you $20 million and take 2 years. He was silent. He knew I was right. I'll take it to the board, he whispered. You do that, I said. And Marcus, tell Austin to update his LinkedIn. I hear unemployed is trending. I hung up. I was shaking a little. 5 million. It was a crazy number, but they were losing that much in market valuation every hour. I was transitioning from an emotionally scarred, overworked employee to a shrewd, high-stakes negotiator. This wasn't revenge for my past. It was securing my future. I poured another cup of coffee. The chaos felt good, clean. I knew the board would fold. Men like Gordon and Brad understood only money and loss. And I had just given them a masterclass in both. At 1 p.m., my phone rang. It was a conference line. The area code was Delaware Legal HQ. I put it on speaker and set it on the table next to my half-eaten lunch. This is Parker, I said, crunching into a macadamia nut. Parker, this is Jonathan Sterling? A deep, gravelly voice said. The chairman of the board, the money man. You have the full board on the line, along with Gordon and Marcus. Hi, Jonathan. Long time. Remember the Christmas party where you asked me to fix your wife's iPad? Good times. Parker. Sterling cut in, his voice tight. Let's cut the pleasantries. We have a crisis. We understand there is a dispute regarding the ownership of the AWS root credentials. There's no dispute, Jonathan, I said. I have the receipts. You have the outage. It's pretty clear. You're prepared to offer you reinstatement, Sterling said, sounding like he was swallowing broken glass. With a 20% raise. And we will address the management issues that led to this. Address? I laughed. You mean Austin? Is he on the line? Hey, Austin. How's the audit going? Find any more efficiencies? Silence. I could hear someone breathing heavily. Probably Austin hyperventilating. I'm not coming back, Jonathan, I said. That bridge is burned. You salted the earth when you fired me via email during my PTO. I don't work for people who treat me like disposable hardware. Then we will accept your offer, Sterling said quickly. The buyout. $5 million. We will wire it today. Just give us the keys. He folded too fast. That was my first clue. Men like Sterling don't write $5 million checks without a fight unless they are truly, deeply desperate, or unless they're lying. Draft the contract, I said. Send it to my personal email. Once the funds clear in my LLC's account, I will transfer the credentials. We need access now, Parker? Gordon interrupted. His voice was shaky. The investors are pulling out. We need the lights on now. Funds clear first, I said. That's how commerce works, Gordon. You don't get the groceries until you pay the cashier. We can't wait for a wire transfer to clear, Gordon shouted. That takes 24 hours. Should have thought of that before you fired the account holder, I said. Parker. Marcus said, his voice soft. Please, for the team. Kevin is crying. They've been up since 4 a.m. trying to rebuild from scraps. Just turn on the read access. Let us see the data. I hesitated. Not because I trusted them, but because I checked my other email account, the one on my phone that didn't belong to Cloud Corp or Parker Smith Consulting. I had an email from Vertex Systems, their biggest competitor. Subject: offer letter. I had been talking to Vertex for months, casually. Their CTO, Alina, was a friend. She knew I was unhappy. When she saw the news break this morning, she didn't just send condolences. She sent a PDF. I opened it while the board breathed heavy on the line. Position: VP of Cloud Architecture. Salary double my current package. Signing bonus $150,000. Equity substantial. But the kicker was the text message Alina sent me separately. Alina texted, "Hold the line. We are preparing a hostile bid for Cloud Corp. If their stock tanks another 10%, we can buy them for parts. We want you to run the integration." I smiled. The game had changed. I wasn't just selling the keys. I was selling the castle. Parker, Sterling asked. "Are you there?" "I'm here," I said. "I'm thinking." "We will wire $100,000 immediately as a good faith payment," Sterling offered. "Just turn on the servers." "No," I said. "Here's the new deal. I'm going to hang up. You're going to send the contract for the full $5 million. And while you're doing that, I suggest you check the news wire." "What?" "Why?" "Because," I said, "I think you have bigger problems than me." I hung up. I didn't have to wait long. 5 minutes later, the notification popped up on my screen. Breaking. Vertex Systems announces tender offer to acquire struggling Cloud Corp at $12 per share. A 40% discount from yesterday's valuation. The board meeting I just left must have turned into a bloodbath. They weren't just fighting me anymore. They were fighting for their existence. And I held the ace. If Vertex bought Cloud Corp, I wouldn't need to sell the keys to Sterling. I'd be giving them to Alina, my new boss. I texted Alina. "They're on the ropes. Finish them." Alina replied, "Offer sent to board. We explicitly listed resolution of infrastructure liabilities as a condition of closing." "That means you." I leaned back. The sun was setting again. It had been 36 hours. I had destroyed a company, secured a massive payday, and lined up a promotion, all while wearing a bathrobe. The next 12 hours were a blur of lawyers, digital signatures, and absolute vindication. Cloud Corp initially rejected the buyout offer from Vertex. Hubris is a hell of a drug. They thought they could still salvage it. They thought they could bully me into submission with threats. Brad, the general counsel, sent a formal cease and desist letter. I replied with a screenshot of the AWS Terminate Account button, labeled Action. Delete organization. He went silent. Gordon went on CNBC television to try and calm the markets. He looked 10 years older, stammering something about a vendor dispute and legacy anomalies. The anchor asked him, "Is it true that a single employee owns your entire cloud stack?" Gordon froze. The stock tanked another 15% before the commercial break. That's when Alina, the CTO of Vertex, called me. "They're folding," she said. Her voice was crisp, professional, and triumphant. "Sterling just called our CEO. They're accepting the acquisition offer. $10 a share. It's a fire sale." "Congratulations," I said. "You just bought a lemon." "No," Alina said. "We bought the customer list and we bought the IP. The infrastructure. Well, we have our own. We just need to migrate the data. And lucky for us, we just hired the person who has the keys." I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. "So, I'm hired. The offer letter is in your inbox," Alina confirmed. "VP of Infrastructure. You report directly to me. No Austins, no Gordons. And Parker. We pay for the AWS accounts on the corporate card from day one." "Deal?" "Deal," I said. "One condition." "Though, what is it?" "We need the Cloud Corp system back online by tomorrow morning," Alina added, preempting my thought. "We can't announce the acquisition if the product is dead. It scares the clients." "Consider it done," I said. "But I want to do it my way. As long as it's green by 9 a.m., I don't care how you do it." I hung up and opened the Vertex offer letter. It was beautiful. A signing bonus that wiped out my mortgage, stock options in a stable, competent company, and a title that commanded respect. I signed it digitally. The emotional arc of professional betrayal was finally reaching its climax. I wasn't getting my old job back. I was getting a promotion to conquer the people who had fired me. Now for the loose ends. I still had root access, and I had a decade of built-up frustration to release. I drafted one last email to the Cloud Corp board. To Board of Directors. CC Gordon, Austin, and Brad. From Parker Smith, Vice President, Vertex Systems. Subject resolution. The body was short and brutal. As you are aware, Vertex Systems has acquired Cloud Corp. As the new VP of Infrastructure for Vertex, I am authorized to assume control of all legacy assets. I will be restoring service shortly. Regarding the $5 million buyout we discussed. Since Vertex now owns you, that point is moot. However, I have attached an invoice for $42,381.12 for this month's AWS bill. Please remit payment to my personal Amex immediately. Austin, I suggest you back up your emails locally. I'll be wiping the executive mail servers first as part of the security audit. I hit send. I imagined the room where they were reading it. The silence. The realization that not only had they lost the company, the woman they fired was now coming back as their conqueror, demanding payment for the very system she was about to seize. It was time to restore the sky. I opened my laptop one last time as Parker Smith Consulting, LLC. I was no longer acting out of spite. I was acting with a new, corporate mandate, a clean slate, and a healthy dose of satisfaction. I went to the API gateway. I set the throttling limits back to 10,000. I went to the CloudWatch dashboard. I restored the core widgets, watching the blank screens flicker back to life. I went to the security groups. I re-enabled the database connections. It took 5 minutes of rhythmic, professional commands. Slowly, the graph started to populate. The red lines turned green. The error rate dropped to 0. The heartbeat of the $200 million company returned. I watched the traffic spike as users flooded back in. It was working. The sky was back on, but it wasn't their sky anymore. It was mine, and now it was Vertex's. But before I closed the laptop for good, I had one final, small act of petty vengeance to execute. I accessed the internal splash page, the one the employees saw when they tried to log in. I typed a simple HTML file. Heading 1, Error 4. 4. Competence not found. Paragraph, please contact Austin for support. He knows a guy at Stratosphere Solutions. I pushed the update to the internal server. Petty? Yes. Satisfying. Orgasmic. I closed the laptop. I was done. I walked down to the beach. The stars were out. The ocean was loud. I felt lighter than I had in 20 years. They fired me to save money. In the end, it cost them everything. 2 days later, I was back in Oregon. Not at the Cloud Corp office. That place smelled of fear and packed boxes. But at the Vertex headquarters across town. It was a glass tower that actually looked like it was built in this century. I felt the lightness of the resolution from Maui still clinging to me. The heavy coat of exhaustion I'd worn for 3 years had been shrugged off. A joint press conference was scheduled. The acquisition was official. I wasn't supposed to be on stage, I was just the vice president of infrastructure. But Alina insisted. You're the face of the merge, she said. Plus, the internet loves you. The hashtag Parker was right is still trending. We watched from the wings as Gordon took the podium. He looked 10 years older. He read from a prepared statement, his voice devoid of that arrogant visionary spark. We believe this merger represents the best path forward for our stakeholders, he mumbled. Then, the Vertex chief executive officer took the mic. He was a sharp, no-nonsense guy. He thanked Gordon in that dismissive way you thank a waiter who spilled soup on you. And then he invited the new leadership team on stage. And leading our combined infrastructure strategy, he said, pausing for effect, Parker Smith. I walked out. The flashbulbs popped. I saw Gordon flinch. I saw Austin standing in the back of the room near the exit sign. He wasn't wearing his Patagonia vest. He was wearing a wrinkly suit. He looked small and utterly defeated. I took the mic. I didn't have a speech prepared. I didn't need one. Technological debt, I said, my voice resonating clearly into the silence, is real. But the most expensive debt a company can accrue is human debt. When you treat your foundational people like outdated hardware, you don't just lose efficiency. You lose your foundation. I looked directly at Austin. He looked down at his shoes. Cloud Corp fell because it forgot who held up the sky. At Vertex, we build weatherproof roofs. There was applause. It was polite corporate applause, but from the back I saw the DevOps team, Kevin, Sarah, the whole crew, who had been hired by Vertex as part of the deal, cheering wildly. Kevin pumped a fist in the air. That small moment of recognition from the people who actually understood the work meant more than the $5 million I might have demanded. After the conference, Gordon tried to approach me. Parker, he said, putting on a fake smile. No hard feelings, right? It's just business. I looked at him. I thought about the funeral I missed. I thought about the years of stress and the cold, metallic void I'd carried. It wasn't business, Gordon, I said. Business involves paying your bills. You were just a squatter. I walked past him. Security was already escorting Austin out of the building. I heard him arguing about his severance. I have a contract, he was shouting. Read the fine print? I called out to him, a slight, final smirk on my face. Legacy clauses are a killer. I went up to my new office. It had a view of the river. It had a real espresso machine. And most importantly, it had a team that respected me and a clear mandate from a competent executive. I sat down at my desk. My new laptop was waiting. A company issued MacBook Pro. I logged in. Username parkersmith@vertex.com. Access level administrator. I opened a terminal. I typed uptime. System up 2 hours, 14 minutes. It was a fresh start. I pulled a small bottle of sriracha out of my bag, my one concession to chaos, and put it on my desk. I took a sip of my coffee. They tried to delete me. Instead, they just rebooted me with better specs. The internal conflict that had driven me, the need to prove my worth and reconcile my sacrifice, was quiet now. I didn't need external validation anymore. The victory was its own proof. I was finally free of the debt I owed to my former self, and the grief I'd put on hold. I put my headphones on and played the sound of rain. The sky was clear. The forecast was excellent. And if anyone ever tried to fire me again, well, let's just say I made sure the kill switch on the new system was even harder to find. Funny how some people forget who built the system they depend on until it's gone. In the end, it wasn't revenge. It was accountability, delivered in code and calm.